Hello, it's June 15th, and I'm Pastor Penny. And so I have a story for you today and there are a lot of good stories in the Old Testament. Um, you should read them sometime. This one starts out in Numbers, and the setting is that the Israelites have left Egypt, and they're in the wilderness going toward the promised land. And if maybe you remember that they started out, well, they wind the whole way through 40 years, and Moses was leading them. And the way things, and then they got to a point where they were, their faith had increased, and the way things were working is that a cloud would be over them, and it turned into fire during the day. And so they would follow that cloud, and wherever it stopped, they would set up camp. And the people leading this procession were carrying the Ark of the Covenant, or the Tent of the Testimony is another name for it. And inside that were the Ten Commandments. And so they would, wherever they stopped, when the cloud stopped, it would stay over them, and they would set up camp around this sacred Ark of the Covenant, which was supposed to be God's message to them and to Judaism, the Ten Commandments. So that was showing faith. That was showing great faith to stop when the cloud said to stop, or was there, and then to stay as long as the cloud was there, and pack up and go toward the promised land when the cloud wasn't there, or when the cloud moved, rather. So finally, they get to the edge of the promised land, and they're worried because everybody is really big, are big people in around inside the boundaries of the promised land. And so they powwow, and they send spies in to check it out, and Moses says, "Have you no faith? This is where God sent us." And so but the cities were large, and they were well protected. And so the Israelite men felt like grasshoppers. And they decided there's no way they're going to overpower these people in the promised land. But so Joshua and Caleb protested, and they reminded the people that God had led them to this point, so they should have faith and move forward. Well, this resulted in a huge argument. And the majority of Israelites eventually decided they would just stone Joshua and Caleb, fire Moses, and elect a new leader to take them back to Egypt, after all they've been through and all the faith they've just shown. Well, as has happened before, God was really angry. He was ready to wipe out the whole bunch of them, and Moses interceded again. So God forgave the people, but he decided they'd have to wander in the wilderness for another 40 years until everyone over the age of 20 had died. And the only exceptions were Joshua and Caleb, who had demonstrated their strong faith. Well, naturally, the Israelites were pretty unhappy when they heard this news. And so then, after all that, they decided to go ahead and enter the promised land, no matter what God had just told them. So Moses warned that God was not with them, but they wouldn't listen. And as a result, they were severely They were severely put upon. That's not the right word I'm looking for, but they were swallowed up. And so isn't that, it's a story about faith, and it's a story about humanity, but how quickly they lost their faith. And sometimes, as we all know, it's when something difficult comes up, like you want us to go into the promised land where everybody's giant compared to us, and the cities are huge and well protected. You're going to be with us for that? It's tough. It's tough to keep faith sometimes, and we don't always succeed. But I thought that was a pretty good story about faith, and so maybe that will help you when you are not feeling it, are not feeling the faith. So, blessings.